So that was pre-flop. Now I went through that very quickly, but keep in mind that raising on the button is not nearly as important, I guess, as in heads up as it maybe would be in a 6-max or flooring game. There's just going to be so much more action going on that raising on the button is almost going to be expected of you. So therefore, once you get standard range down, there's not really a whole lot left to accomplish other than, once we go to 3 bets and 4 bets, then there's something else, some more dynamics to go on. But really, the money's going to be won and lost post-flop. And the flop play, we'll go over that right now, is the first vehicle of that. Our pre-flop range is going to be so wide, we have to be c-betting just a ton post-flop as well, including like a wider c-bet for value range and a 3-bet bluffing range. And then we're also going to go over when we should checking behind and how that affects the rest of our play. So first let's go to value betting. You can value bet much thinner in heads up as you can in any other form of hold'em, just because the big blind, when he does call, he's going to be calling us with pretty much anything playable on the flop. And that's including ace high, any pair, any kind of a draw. He's going to be calling or bluff raising us with, in some aspect or another. Some players are going to be so tight that they're going to be folding everything, but most of the time, if they call us pre-flop and they hit something on the flop, they're not folding. Unlike other games, or I guess maybe in some blind versus blind battles, nobody folds, but in 6-max and flooring. But unlike in other games, you can't really expect anybody to fold anything. So you've got to play how you play around that. We're going to be pretty much betting any top pair we get on the flop whenever we hit it. It doesn't matter if it's 10, ace deuce or 10 deuce. Betting top pair for value is going to be very standard. We're also going to be betting most second pairs as well, especially on the draw heavy boards. If our and that especially with kickers like 10 and higher. So that means if we have a hand like king 10 and ace king 10, we can be betting that for value. If we have same thing, 10-9 on jack 9 deuce with this middle pair like 10 kicker, we can be betting that for value. Just because against a lot of the players we're going to be playing against, they're going to be calling so much garbage out of position that they're going to be calling us on the flop with so many weak hands. Alright, we can even bet second pair no kicker versus calling stations, like maybe our king X with the king, just because calling stations are going to call us with any gut shot draw, maybe even just randomly 10 high and stuff. And against those kind of guys, we can be value betting fairly thin. Now let's go into checking behind, and we can check behind hands, or we should check behind hands that really have showdown value. That include hands like bottom pair of all kinds, and then the strong ace highs as well. Bottom pairs include maybe you raised ace 5 on the button, and then the board comes king 10-5, and you have an overcard and bottom pair. You don't really want to be turning that hand into a bluff. Alright, the reason why we don't turn our hands into a bluff is that we want to get maximum value from every single situation that we can. And if we check behind there, we're going to be wanting to take some hands to showdown. We're facing a lot of barrels, right? And to do that, bottom pair is a good opportunity to do that. When you check behind the flop, you're going to pretty much just give your opponent a license to steal. And most players have a hard time not betting the turn once the flop is checked behind. And that's pretty much any other hand range. So we can induce a lot of bluffs when we check behind. Same thing when we have a hand like ace 10 or higher, right? We don't want to be c-betting a missed ace king heads up in position, because what's going to happen is only hands are going to call us are hands that really beat us or have a lot of equity against us. So we check that behind. We can induce a bluff on the turn, pick it off, and then potentially call it off again on the river, maybe even fold the river, depending on how our opponent tendencies are. Right. So the number one goal here for checking behind is not to turn main hands into bluffs, and then to get maximum value from every hand. We're not going through any metagame strategies right now, such as, if your opponent has seen you check behind your showdownable hands and not bet them, he's going to be able to play perfectly against you. So you will have to mix it up a little bit, but that doesn't mean for our quote-unquote standard range, this is what you guys are going to be wanting to be doing. On to the next slide, we'll go over continuation bet bluffing. And just like, I guess, very similar to the full ring and 6 max games, our c-bet ranges are going to be very similar. In heads up, we want to be c-betting when we have very little chance of winning if we check behind. An example of that would be, like, let's say we have Jack 10 on an 8 or Ace 8 deuce rainbow board, right? Jack high on an ace high board has very little chance of winning. So we pretty much have to bet there as our only chance of winning the hand. If our opponent is likely to call us, though, we probably shouldn't be c-betting. An example would be on a board like Jack 10-9, and we have a hand like Ace Deuce, right? Jack 10-9, any card 8 or higher pretty much has hit that board, other than the hand that we currently have. So we can't really expect our opponent to fold there. So we can do that. Our opponent is like, we also like c-bet hands our opponent's likely to have missed, and an example of that would be again like Ace 8-2, or perhaps even like Jack 6-2 rainbow. He's not likely to hit that board, so if we have a hand like King Queen, we can bet that card, or maybe even Queen 10. And that also includes boards where we can fire a lot of 2 barrels, and that includes, we'll talk about 2 barreling here in a minute, but if you guys aren't familiar with that, I would believe that we covered a lot in the other 6 max and full ring cash sessions, including scare cards and stuff. So I'm not going to repeat myself here all that much, as I'm going to expect you have working knowledge of that. Another reason why we can c-bet as a bluff, it's more of a semi-bluff, is that when we have a draw of some kind, either a flush draw, an open and straight draw, or a gut shot draw, we've got enough equity there that we can bluff that even when our opponent won't be folding a whole lot. Having like an 8-out draw is going to be so huge, and even a gut shot draw is pretty big, because then what will normally happen is we'll check behind the turn and then get a free card to our draw on the river, and usually we don't just have a draw. In most instances, usually we have a draw with a pair to go with it when we do hit. You know what I mean? So pretty good option there.